Can you get a bottle opener? Could you get a bottle opener in that Deschutes beer, I think, that I didn't bring out here? Just us.
You were still kind of muted.
You're not muted now.
Maybe I can't hear you.
Are we muted?
We're not muted.
Okay.
That's weird.
Can you hear us?
Try it again.
Can you hear us?
Talking.
Can you hear us now, Mark?
There we go. Must be my AirPods.
Okay.
I'll have to figure that out because it'd be nice to be able to use them.
The Bluetooth headphones that Kylie got me, I can't get to work and do meetings. Hey, Angela.
Hi.
Hello.
I haven't quite figured it out. I also found out that if I was listening to a town hall meeting for the U of O on them at work, and then I decided I would play my PS4 at the same time, and the Bluetooth between the controller caused the headphones to pair to them.
Okay.
It was really weird, and then all of a sudden I couldn't hear my town hall.
That's weird.
Yeah, it kind of sucked.
Stink cups.
Oops. I don't want to try this again.
So nobody's allowed to laugh too much at me for the fact that I use teacups for all of my tasting.
Use what you got.
Yep.
Okay, so now it works. That's really weird.
That is strange.
I have to pair them after the Zoom meeting starts. Seems weird.
I blame Zoom.
Okay, I'm down. As long as it's not me.
I don't know. Sometimes it's definitely the tech, but like my director has a Surface Pro, and phone and speaker combo doesn't really work out very well, so he has to plug in a pair of headphones. The ears don't work on the headphones, but it's so he can bypass the mic on the Surface.
Okay.
So he has
So
to
he has to use the mic here,
and then
but like listen through the computer.
Yeah. We're just gonna move on without Dana. No. And just FYI, we are live streaming on YouTube, so.
I see that.
Did we get them beer? Did they ask for beer?
No, they didn't ask for beer. It's a little late for them to come get it from our porch, though.
Yeah, hopefully they got some at a store locally. Or are just here to hang out.
Yeah, hangout is good.
They got beers.
While we're doing this, I'm introducing my children to Wallace and Gromit.
Oh, nice.
Yay.
I was like, what am I going to do with you guys this evening while I'm tasting beer? And I went, oh, you haven't watched those before. My poor son was a little put off by the wrong trousers. Just, the trousers were a little freaky.
Dude, it's scary for adults. That one's scary. The penguin is freaky.
The penguin is kind of creepy. Yeah. But now they're onto a close shave, so I'm hoping that'll go better. Some of my favorites.
They are awesome. And then you can move right into Shaun the Sheep and
Yep. Timmy. Timmy, the spin-off of that one.
I don't know Timmy.
When we were in England, we went to the Amazon UK site and ordered like all the Wallace and Gromit stuff that we couldn't get over here. Because we spent Christmas over there, and so it was just like Wallace and Gromit Christmas. Everything is Wallace and Gromit.
That's awesome. I have a great appreciation for English cheeses because of them.
Yes.
More stinkiness.
I don't think I have a bottle opener at my desk.
I got all
Shame, Dana, shame.
and left it.
Here, you can
I
use
do
mine.
have a lighter.
Mine's from when I was a child.
Yeah, I recognize that. I think
I was gonna
every
say that. Yeah, that pattern was on like everything. Fridges.
I mean, Dana, you can open up a beer with a lighter.
I'm not very good at it, and
Some people can.
really
I can't
end
do
up
it.
hurting myself.
Teeth. Desk side.
I like the end of a spoon. Always a better luck with those than lighter.
Oh, I just got how you can open it with a lighter. I was thinking something very chemical would happen, like you heat it and it explodes, melts the stuff on the inside.
I like that.
I mean, I guess that's one way you could do it.
You know, that's my brain. My WMD brain goes to that first. How can we make it explode?
Let's see. Gotta get. Okay.
Laura Gold. Look at that.
Okay. We'll get Steve. Steve just emailed me. He was having troubles getting in.
There's
glad-
John.
I'm glad I'm paying attention to
The
my
emails.
phone. Yeah. When did we celebrate 64 years? Like that's an odd number.
It is an odd number.
That's Kathleen's screen.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a graduate right there.
Elderflower
Wait,
mojito.
I've shared my screen. That's great.
Good job. Pretty
Cocktail.
advanced.
Ooh.
This lady's the first one to get a degree from Oregon State, and so it just you had to do this.
She's so tiny.
Wait, how do I get it live? Yeah, what'd you do? I don't know, man. Oh, there we go. Start video. Hello. There you go. Okay. It's been a while, so I forgot how to do it. Hi.
Too long. Too long.
Started working full time at the beginning of May, and that was just done at the end of the day.
Glad Santa showed up.
Yep, Santa's here. Watching the email.
Well, I got in to see if there were any updates, and it didn't say, I logged in, it didn't say any updates. I thought, okay, well, whatever. And then I try and get in here, and it's like, hey, we got an update for you. So,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no,
They're fast.
yeah.
there's at least it's not a bad thing to update, but it is. There was one, whatever update it was, like 2 weeks ago at the U of O, that if you didn't run it, you didn't get to use it at all. So.
It's harsh.
Okay. Okay, Steve can't get in. Let's see if I can invite. How do I do that?
If you go to participants. And then
Invite.
yeah.
Let's see.
What the heck is that?
I haven't been able to get up because I've got this this cat on me.
The titty tat.
That's a very
Cat locked.
That's a pretty pussy. Wow, it's giant.
Yeah, he's close.
Hello.
First perspective.
Aaron, what's on your shirt?
Oh, it says extra golden. It's this it's a band.
That says extra golden. Okay, I see it now. Okay. Or beer.
Yeah, it could be a beer.
Now Ian is saying band. He's starting to repeat all my words, so I better watch my fucking language.
We'll say, teach him some good ones, like impeach.
Impeach.
Treason.
Treason.
Maybe you meant band is in books.
Steve, are you not coming in here?
He's camping.
It's not. I'll save my seat then. I'll take the good chair.
Okay, we're still waiting on some people, so we're not going to just dive right into the whole thing. I'm watching my email, trying to pay attention to that. I'm going to also double check the YouTube live stream, and just FYI to everyone, that link is on our.
He's camping.
Right, and there's also, like, Mark, I don't know when you mentioned camping, but that just came up on the live stream.
Oh.
That was a while ago.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a delay there. Okay. Holy hell, we have, I think, more people here than we've had in any other meeting. Well, no.
Free
Not
beer.
quite. We got 13
I was
people.
enticed by the free beer.
I mean, free beer. I figured that would get people's attention.
How many people signed up for free beer?
15, I think.
Nice. Thank you, Kylie.
You're welcome.
So I think he's locked out.
I guess you could just have them watch the YouTube stream.
I mean, he could do that. Shit, I don't know what that link is.
Did you send like the copy URL straight from the meeting?
Yeah, I copied the whole invitation.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm out.
Hey, Matt.
How's everyone doing tonight?
We got free beer.
Wow.
Oh, good.
I agree, me too. Really appreciate that. It sounds like an excellent plan for a meeting.
God damn it. And, okay. Try and get him in there. Okay, so we got 14 people. I think people have got their stuff. If you do have your beers, you'll obviously want to stagger them in some way to try and keep them both cold, but warm enough that, you know, you can entice some of those aromas and flavors out. So that could be one option. So just be thinking about that. If for whatever reason you need to, make sure you have a dump bucket. You may find some of these absolutely atrocious. You know, that Pilsner really sucks on days like today. So you may want to just like drain for it right after you're done. I'm only kidding. Let's see, a couple of other things, because I know, Aaron, you did connect with Brant, right? And Brant got his beers. Okay, so I'm gonna try and push for some time. We'll see if we can get everyone in here that needed to be in here. But hi, happy end of June. Fast turning into July for our third digital meeting kind of puts it in perspective how long we've been doing this now, because we had one meeting canceled
Yeah.
and then 3 digital meetings, and God knows where we're going from here. So I will do my due diligence. If you haven't seen the news update for the afternoon, there is a new mandate out from the governor about wearing masks indoors that is effective July 1st. If that's news to you, I would encourage you to read it, because I don't really feel like, oh yeah, Aaron, good job there.
He's indoors.
I don't really feel like summarizing it too much. And Kelly's going for the.
I like that.
Yeah, it's indoor public places, not your home, and not a private business that doesn't allow public in.
Right. So yeah, just know that if you got one of Kathleen's alien masks, you're well set if you didn't have a mask before. On my end, I don't really have any slides to share. We're not going to do any screen sharing right now. But just thinking about the club and the club activities, some things that people might be asking about or be thinking about. The first one is River Road Garage Crawl. Talking with, Dan Dixon. The idea still exists that it could happen. That was a month ago, and some conversation happened, and there was some good ideas there. And then Oregon kind of hit what we're doing right now, and it's kind of, who knows? So with everything going on, Dan Dixon was out for the weekend, and I haven't had a chance to really have a conversation with him about what his thoughts are. But I do know that if it does happen, it's not July. So don't feel like you have to keep weekends open. So know that it would look to probably be some sort of an event for an August or September again, if it does happen. Right now, personally, the news in Oregon is craptacular enough that I'm somewhat leery of most things anymore involving large gatherings of people, especially considering that it's essentially, it's not that I don't trust you all, but it's just that I don't trust people who've been drinking. And it seems like every single event that we do involves drinking for good reason. But it is one of those things that, I think we all could admit that the moment we've had a couple beers, or, if we're, say, at Jeremiah's house and the port comes out and then the whiskey comes out, our personal decision-making about safety can potentially go flying out the window. Especially when like the 2013 port comes out, and then that's some really dangerous stuff. So
Tasty though.
it's really tasty, really tasty. So that's Garage Crawl. So again, just it's essentially a big, I have no idea. The other one then is going to be Camp Out. Clark Creek is officially open. They opened just over a week ago. I don't really feel like repeating what I just said about the Garage Crawl with the Camp Out. Just know that essentially what I said there for me personally applies to the Camp Out. Kind of seeing where the governor is going right now, if Oregon doesn't get any better, I would fully expect the state to start getting clamped down again, which then again puts the decision out of our hands. So we have time, but at the same time, it's something that there's going to have to be some sort of conversation about. If there is no news, the closer we get, because we're entering July, we're going to be that 1 month-ish away from our Camp Out weekend. But it is one where I feel like I should remind people that you should feel free to voice your opinions. So if we start like a big email thread, I'm not quite certain how that would work with the club. Or if there's a Facebook post or there's something on Discord, you should feel safe in saying what you feel is what you need. The flip side of that is I don't want anyone attacking anyone else because someone says, you know, this is what I feel like in terms of camp out, either holding camp out or not having camp out. That's attacking people personally about what they feel their own safety is not something that I'm going to stand by and watch. That's not how this club operates, and that's not what I want to see via email, online, anything. So that's essentially what I had to say about camp out. Brant, I don't know if you've heard any more about camp out from the official channels.
No, I haven't heard anything more than what you just said, that they're opening up the campground now. I mean, and things stay stable, then that date would be available to us. If it's still open and we're still in the middle of all this stuff, I think that the club needs to decide what they want to do, and we need to do it definitely with the eye towards safety and also with consideration that we're all going to be drinking.
Yeah, and I
So
think
hold my beer.
But yeah, I think that's the one thing is that no matter what happens, you know, if for whatever reason people feel like, hey, camp out should happen, the one thing that I would suggest to everyone is you need to make that decision with your own safety in mind. Everyone has their own considerations to make. Everyone has their own little bubbles that they're feeling very comfortable with, or at least, you know, that they have to keep safe.
I'd like to put forward that maybe we just have a day and not an overnight thing, because one of the biggest vectors is the bathroom, and the longer we're there, the more bathroom use there is. So I think maybe if people really want to do something like a full day trip on Saturday or Sunday, might satisfy those cravings and keep us more on the safe side.
I think that's a good option, and that's what I want. I mean, we can use this space now, but I know that there's people who would be interested in having some sort of a conversation that aren't going to be on this call. So I think that keeping that option.
I think it needs to be a, you know, basically presented to the group. And my feeling is that the executive committee, by the way our bylaws are written, that, you know, they can make a decision, you know, about how it's going to happen or not happen. And we're all kind of obligated to abide by that.
It's my Facebook.
Yeah, and what I think what we'll do is I'm going to put a call out to the club probably in a day or two, just asking for input. And just so it doesn't flood my inbox, I'll probably do some sort of a Google form.
Keep is coming.
But I think just to give people some input, and it will need to be essentially time sensitive. So one thing I would ask for the people who are here is be thinking about what you would like said, like on your behalf, and be ready to put that in. The form itself can remain anonymous. If you want to put your name to it, that's fine. But I do know that some people are very leery about having their name attached to sometimes a strong opinion, and they don't necessarily want that filtering out even to members of the EC. So to Adam's point, do we need an official club policy on kissing at the campout? Brian was tasked to redo the bylaws. So Brian?
Brian just ran away.
I'll go with Aaron.
just gentle air kisses. Okay.
Ian's really good at it.
You see like masks where there's a hole where you can put a straw through, so you know, it might work.
Well, that's I saw a picture of somebody who got a cigarette in the side of their mask so they could smoke Mask was still here, but they had their cigarette coming out the side. Which, if you're wearing a paper mask, I would be a little bit worried. Like you stuck that down a little too far. I mean, me personally, I mean, I don't smoke cigarettes, but I mean, that'd be the other issue is you get that a little too close to the beard and then just no need for a barber.
The crazy straw equivalent of the cigarette holder.
There you go. There you go.
There you go. Yeah. But if you vape, then everything you breathe out is going to stay in your mask, and you get double, twice the deal.
Okay. I think we have as many people that have joined us as we can get in. I know Steve Bruce was trying to get in. He was having some issues. I hope we have him on YouTube, which if that's the case, Steve, in 30 seconds, you're going to be hearing this. And that's great. I'm happy you're here. And if you're not there, I'm just speaking into the void. It's all good. So I think let's take Dana's lead here. We do have 3 beers. But before we crack any of these beers open, number one, I see Brant printed it out. A couple of things with this. If you are running digital, there's going to be a lot of kind of radio silence on this. Like it's very introspective. It's not going to be a lot of guided practice through this because this is something for you to do on your own. What the intent here is to do each beer individually, and in between each beers, maybe talk about our flavor wheels. If you're doing it digitally, if you want to screen share, people are able to screen share, and then go from there. A note about the paper versions, because you don't have the same restrictions that we do if we're using Google Sheets. Dana restricted the Google Sheets to being whole numbers only. If you need a refresher, no fractions, no decimals. So you may want to abide by that if you're on paper. I can't stop you from saying it's a 3.2 out of 5 instead of a 4.7. But it does make it a little bit easier to just line up the tick marks. The other thing, if you're on paper, the end result when people are done with the beer connects the dots all together, and then you have kind of a spider graph. So you may want to do that as well.
So let me just interject real quick. Part of the reason that I have these as whole numbers and not halves or smaller steps is that I find having a middle point and then end caps are really good. That's why I like the 0 to 5 setting. On the paper ones, or on ones that have lighter restrictions, you can go down to half points, but I really feel like keeping it such on an even scale like this is just a really solid way to do it. And as you practice or get better at doing these, as maybe someone like Kylie could comment, it just becomes inherent. Like you just go through and your gut feeling kind of takes over as you're doing it.
Right. Yeah. And so one of the things too that you'll notice with Dana's wheel, and Dana, you can speak to this a little bit more if you want. There's nothing here that is specific to aroma, hops, malt, like individually. Like there's flavor, aroma. You can probably see in both of these. There's some mouthfeel aspects. There's characters of malt. There's characters of hop. So Dana, can you talk about why you have those blended and what people can be looking for there?
Yeah, so one of the things that we all can acknowledge as avid beer snobs is that there's a lot of crossover in different flavors, right? You can get a really fruity flavor from hops. You can get a really fruity flavor from certain malts. You can get, banana flavor from yeast. So to really sort of lock you down and say, is your hop flavor fruity, is I think a little bit limiting. So that's why, what are you guys laughing about over there?
Yeah. Garlic burp. Yeah. Garlic burp.
Garlic burp. Oh no, poor sensory. And one of the things also that is conversation starting is that there's a lot of overlap with a lot of these terms that you can see on the flavor wheel. So even though I have it broken up in quadrants where those first four elements are taste, the second four are mouthfeel or textures, and then it kind of goes into a malt-like category and then sort of a hop-like category. But again, yeast plays a big role, and I think a really talented home brewer or commercial brewer can pull out unique flavors from unique malt and hop combinations.
Absolutely. One thing that I will ask people to do is, as you're filling this out, see if you can differentiate, like when you're saying fruity, if you're getting it in aroma or flavor, because I have something at the end of all three of these that I'm going to ask people to think about. In terms of time, I've got people on camera, I've got people off camera. Just kind of as a show of thumbs up, you can do that. There's reactions if you want. Does 3 minutes sound okay to do the Pilsner? That's going to be the first one we do. Okay.
I would say like 3 to 4 minutes. Some people like to really take their time and especially their first way through. So okay. Maybe this first one a little bit longer. And then by Otis, we can speed it up.
Right. And so what I'll do is I'm just going to start a timer. At the 3 minute mark, I'm just going to come back, check in with people. I'm going to mute myself so you don't hear any sort of conversation Kylie and I are having that might prejudice your ratings. And then at the 3 minute mark, I will unmute myself and check in, see if people need more time. And then we can have a conversation about our flavor wheels.
Yeah, and feel free to ask questions while you go. You know, sensory is something that we experience much better when we can communicate about it. So, you know, when you see, you know, sweet on that first column, you know, I want you to not just think about sweet, but I want you to think about like agave. I want you to think about honey, that syrupy flavor, molasses, like all these flavors we associate with that taste of sweetness, and extend that all the way down. You know, these are really broad categories, so it's okay if there's a little overlap and crossover.
Okay, well, here we go. Timer is starting. Cheers, everyone.
It's just so quiet.
Free beer makes us quiet.
Oh, I ruined it.
We just passed that 3-minute mark. How are people feeling? Do we need more time? A little bit more time.
Yeah, I think just a little bit more for me.
That works. I get to sip this beer, so that's pretty good. Mark, a request has been made for your violin to play us through each beer.
You can't taste. I suggested the Final Jeopardy music to Dana.
When you say request, you mean by you?
True.
Wait, but somebody said your violin music. Do I have to be playing now, or do
Mark, you should play the violin.
Yeah, but he said it all coyly, like, "Oh, there's been a request." Somebody else said.
I mean, that's classic deflection as a presenter. Like, you never own up for anything.
Okay, bye-bye.
I can't wait to see his comment on
Yep. Mm. Okay. We wrapping up our spider charts. So we can kind of run down the top bottom if we want. I thought what might be interesting is if anyone, like, what was the highest value that anyone put on their sheet? I'd be curious to hear, and like what value that was. So I got 3s, I got 4s. Aaron, what do you throw a 4 on?
Carbonation. I thought that was pretty prickly.
And we got.
I put a 4 for dryness, but it's between a 3 and a 4 for me, I think.
Kathleen, you said 3. What were you a 3 on?
Bitter, dry, and bready.
I matched you on that dry. Yeah. It kind of, to me, it plays the, and that's kind of, to me, like, how is it malty sweet? I don't know how much malt is there, and then how dry the carbonation, like Aaron was saying, is to me a little high. So then that helps dry it out for me. Dana, what was the number you threw in there that surprised you maybe?
Definitely the 4 on carb. I got like a pretty earthy flavor. It's sort of resinous and a little sticky on the back end.
Kylie and I were debating that one.
Say again?
Kylie and I were debating that one.
Yeah, what were you debating? If it was earthy or herbal?
Yeah, like I pick up a lot of herbal.
and I get the earthiness.
Who else is getting herbal?
I need you to define those difference between earthy and herbal.
I like to think of earthy as like something you could step outside and like grab up. Whereas herbal is something that maybe has a like dried element or maybe a little bit of floral element. So like lavender could go into herbal or floral. So something you might find in your spice cabinet is more on the herbal side.
Okay.
But that's not, but see, you see where there's this like big crossover. When I think of earthy, I think of like onions and garlic and grass and pine and fir. Those kind of like, you know, maybe a dankness, like a lot of marijuana terpene flavors that you can get in out of a lot of big hopped beers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, and John mentioned in the chat, and it looks like some good answers were there. Just kind of what's bready to people. And so,
Yeah, crackers is what I wrote down. Crackers and biscuit.
Yep. And then like potentially even like a little bit of yeast there. If there's a yeast flavor, you can get some bread flavors there. And Aaron mentioned things like toast, bread crust. Those are definitely going to be things too. Like I associate toast with some of the darker lagers. You can get like a toasty, almost like the bread crust, like if you toast a loaf of bread, like I'm gonna toast some toast tomorrow morning, and the crust on my bread's gonna be a little probably overdone in that kind of that note, and like a
Melanoidin.
Yeah. Other thoughts on that people had. Does anyone feel like they want to share their screen to show their flavor wheel?
Yeah, what's the protocol there?
Well, I think everyone has the ability to share their screen. And I would just say, if someone's feeling comfortable with the technology and they want to just jump right into it, I think.
Yeah, I'll share my screen.
Okay.
Let me.
Oh,
Daniel. Yeah, awesome.
There we go. But now I feel like I can't see you guys, so this is lame.
Well, I mean, I think just as an option to see what you have, and to compare it against what maybe other people have.
Wow, how do I get out of it?
There's a red button at the top that says stop sharing.
Yep.
Thank you. All right.
Welcome back.
Aaron,
I want to see some others. Was that pretty similar to everyone else's?
Let's see.
A little bit different from mine.
Maybe magnitude.
Hey, Kelly's. You shook her head no.
Aaron's doing it.
Share that. Can you all see that?
Yep. Wow.
Yep.
So
now I want to like scroll.
Yeah. Oh, do I need to zoom out?
No, we can see it all right.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it definitely looks different from yours, Dana. Like you had a big kind of bulb in your kind of southeast area.
Yeah, what I'm noticing is that I put in a higher warming element, I think, than you did, because I kind of, that carbonation just like kind of warms up the throat a little bit. And so I actually have something there. But other than that, our structures are very similar.
Yeah. And I only associate warming with like alcoholic presence as opposed to like.
That's totally fine.
Yeah. Just stand.
Wait,
Okay.
TV timeout, man. That's not the same chart I'm looking at.
Are they different for different beers?
No, mine goes, I go bready, nutty, roasty, chocolate, earthy. I don't have caramel on mine.
Caramel's on Aaron's. It's just
Well,
a
that's
different.
what she's saying. On the printed one, it's not
On the
there.
printed one, the link, it wasn't on there.
Oh.
Warming body, bready, nutty, roasty, chocolate.
That's true.
Chocolate's not even on this one.
On the email link that I sent out.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, you have a printed one. Oh, I didn't notice that from the Oakshire tasting in which Dan requested chocolate specifically.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of chocolate, it's just say caramel.
Yeah, and generally put the like roast the chocolate under like a roasty ness because chocolate has to be, cocoa beans have to be roasted. There's like a roasting element to it. So but you know, these terms like we're seeing are so interchangeable that I'm not too concerned about it. Do you feel like you're missing out too much here, Kathleen?
No, I think, is that the only one? Did you go body, bready, nutty, roasty, caramel?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's the only difference. Chocolate versus caramel. Okay.
Anyone else want to share?
I have a question. So just for those folks who haven't used this that much,
yeah.
0 is not necessarily bad, and 5 is not necessarily, because it says on the thing, it says overpowering. It's not necessarily, that just means that that's a lot of that. It's a less versus
it's not
a lot.
necessarily negative, right? Okay. You know, maybe it's a bourbon barrel aged stout and the bourbon's really, really strong and that's a 5. What I want you to think about though is keeping 5s to a minimum. You know, unless the beer calls for it, like say a Sriracha porter, where, you know, earthiness and herbalness is going to be real high and so is the sweetness. Unless it's like an extreme beer, there shouldn't be a ton of 5s out there. And 0 doesn't necessarily mean bad either. Like, oh, this is a really bad nuttiness. It's supposed to be that there's not any nuttiness present. You know, nutty can be good. You can have like a really nutty, toasty hazelnut brown, but you could also have THP in a sour that tastes like peanuts. So it sort of leaves the opinion aspect out of it, whether it's a positive trait or a negative trait. It's just, is it present? That answer your question, Kelly?
On the carbonation thing as well, we both put 2 to be our bottle. I mean, because we've had some other bottles from Nkazi we thought were undercarbonated.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
maybe
barely
there's
too.
some people that have low fills.
Yeah.
I was pretty surprised at the effervescence personally.
It can also be like, as with everything, it's kind of how you perceive it. So depending upon, you know, what are you drinking a lot of and what are you used to? If you're used to beers that are, you know, highly effervescent, you know, maybe you're drinking a lot of bottle conditioned saisons.
Well, I had 3 pints of this beer from tap beforehand, and I would have given it a 4 on what I've been drinking up till I tasted this bottle.
Oh, okay. Yeah, compared to draft, I bet this is not as carbonated.
No,
but you have that perspective, right? And the rest of us don't have that like comparison, that direct comparison. That's really cool.
I mean, I compared it to my draft also, and I found the bottle to be quite effervescent. And maybe it's how you pour it and stuff too. But as soon as I put it in my mouth, it just like kind of turns to foam in my mouth, which I kind of like for this beer. But I thought it was a 4. I put a 4 for carbonation.
Well, and
Adam, do you want to share your screen?
I can try. I'm on my phone. We'll see if it works.
Yeah, and while he's doing that, other thing too, the thing to remember, like if you've ever tried to bottle off of a keg, so you know we're doing it at the most lowest tech version. Most of us are, compared to what professionals are doing. You do lose some carbonation at some point, and so it could be potentially bottle to bottle variation, Carl. That if you were to get another 6-pack or another bottle, maybe your other bottles might have that higher carbonation.
Nice.
That you're normally have associated with.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you scroll over to your spider chart?
Yeah. So mine actually looked a lot like Dana's with kind of the bulge off to the right. I found it less warming perhaps, but definitely dry and carbonated. And I thought the discussion of kind of floral, herbal, and earthy was sort of interesting because I found it like floral and earthy, which I guess could be also thought of as herbal. So
you average it out and you get herbal.
Right. Yeah, maybe a little herbal. So I could see how you could get a little bit of each of those in there.
When I find that I'm like kind of having second thoughts about where does it belong within those categories, and you know, even fruity can get into that with orange blossom and other similar flowery fruity flavors. is to like actually hone in and pin down what is that flavor. Like what is that spiciness I'm tasting? And to me, it was like a resiny, piney kind of thing. And to me, that's more earthy than herbal. But you know, fresh pine can also be really, really floral. So for Adam, I'm not surprised. You've spent a lot of time out on the trails. Like that's probably like very floral to you. And it's cool that we can like see that data. And then also how similar all of our wheels have been so far, right? But just at different magnitudes. It's awesome. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, my neighbor also has a jasmine bush next to me here, so maybe everything is going to be a little floral. I don't know. It's amazing smelling, actually. But
Yeah, I want to come pick a bunch.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's wait until we get to Otis, and then we'll see how floral that beer is.
Right. Yeah.
Are we good to move to Galaxy?
Let's do it.
Okay. So same thing. You know, if you feel, I'm gonna mute myself so we can have a conversation, but ask questions in the chat. Unmute yourself if you're muted, and ask away, and then check in about 3 minutes.
I'm finding myself comparing it to the one we just had. I have to not do that, right?
Yes and no. I want you to think about how different it is in comparison to what you just tasted, and then also your expectation for that style. Does that make sense? Right? So maybe that Pilsner was a little on the bitter side for a traditional Pilsner. So think about sort of that element, and then also what is your expectation for, I think it's just straight West Coast IPA, Kylie?
Well, we called it a stellar IPA. But yeah, this is
Australian.
Well, it's like a IPA with Galaxy hops.
Say again.
Oh, you muted me.
No.
It's a West Coast IPA with Galaxy hops, basically.
So it's not stellar like as in a stellar J or a stellar sea lion?
No, it's like space.
That's earthy.
Yeah.
Oh, Belgian.
Coming up on the 3-minute mark. People feeling like they want just a little bit more time? Are we good? A little bit more time? And if you have finished, if you want the specs after each beer and we're moving on to the next one, just so that you aren't kind of pre-clouding your own judgments, I'm going to drop the Ninkasi website for each specific beer after we're done kind of having a conversation about it. So if you have some free time right now, you can click on the link in the chat. That will take you to the Pilsner page. Like, I'm out. I'm done. And palate cleanse.
Palate cleanse.
Kylie's favorite beer.
IPA, yeah. She went shoot. So we ended up with a six pack, two sets of three, since we only had 2 people pick up from us. So Kylie's just cracking into the Pilsner again.
Little palate cleanse.
Palate cleanse.
Yeah, that's perfect. I've got a little left over too. It's kind of nice.
I cleansed my palate of garlic using that, which we'd never had it before, and we bought our first 6-pack, and
Is it good?
At sub 100 calories. Like, this is really great after mowing the lawn. Like, really, really good. I don't know if it's a great beer, but it is. It hit the spot this afternoon.
I haven't had one in a while because the first few that I tried, giving them the benefit of the doubt, were D-bombs.
This one was not.
Good.
Yes.
I also
Where is it, Michael?
It's called Deschutes, from Deschutes. I hate the name. I really, really like the little bear at the bottom of the can.
What about the parrot?
The parrot is
Not
is
on the
gone.
can. Yeah.
They listened.
The moose and like a.
What's wrong with the parrot?
Ferret? I don't know.
Parrot.
Like a
They
parrot,
replaced the parrot with a ferret.
like Trogdor arms. It was weird.
Consummate S's.
That's deep cuts at him.
Yeah.
Consummate V's. I said consummate V's.
Thatched roof cottages.
Yep. Okay, so I think we're probably, since we've moved into Trogdor territory, I think it's safe to say that we've pretty much all completed our spider chart.
Those of us who have unmuted themselves are complete.
That's true. That's true. I'm making some wild assumptions here. My apologies. So again, an interesting way to do it. Especially like coming straight from that Pilsner, Kathleen, I think your question was on the money. Like, do I judge this separate? Do I judge this kind of in tandem to the beer I just had? Because we do have 2 kind of diametrically opposed pale beers that we just drank. So one that can play into, in my opinion, like it can play up the differences quite a bit. Where maybe, I mean, Galaxy hops, if we're talking about what's included there, it's kind of intoned in its name. But you know, the Galaxy hop from Australia is renowned to be this like passion fruit tropical bomb of a hop. And so, you know, you have to think about, did not having much of that hop fruitiness necessarily in the Pilsner play up the hoppy fruitiness, at least that I was getting personally, in this beer. I think instead of asking for people's highest, I would just open it up. Things that stood out to people about Galaxy Trippin', because there is one thing that we will want to say about this beer also.
Besides that it was free.
Besides that it is
Free
free.
beer's always better, man.
There will be no complaining about the variety of free beer served here.
So like thinking about this as like essentially like, let's put this as a West Coast IPA, right? When you look back at your flavor wheel, what jumps out at you? Was there anything surprising on anyone's end that So like John said, it's not as bitter as he thought it would be. Let's talk bitterness. Like, what were people's perception of the bitterness? I got to go back to mine. I don't even know what I
I
might have
put
been.
that it was more bitter than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
I
too.
think it.
Yeah,
Mine's actually changed over the tasting. Like after that Pilsner, drinking this was like, holy shit, this is just really bitter.
I started at a
And
3 for
now-
bitter, and I changed it to a 4.
And see, like
I still have it as a 4, but I noticed like now that I'm drinking it, I feel like that's all I could taste for the first like 2 minutes of the tasting was the bitterness.
And Keaton, I would agree with you. Like, I think I started as a 4. I would dial it back to a 3 because I would agree, like what John's saying. You know, the first taste is like really intense. Second taste is a little bit maybe less intense because maybe my palate has come back to it. I think when I'm thinking about that, the bitterness of this beer, I'm reminded of like, God, who was it that told us like your first foray into sour beer, if you've never had like sour beer at all, it takes at least 3 drinks to actually get past all the different shocks that your palate goes through. I think the same thing with smoke beer. Like, you think about the very first time you drink a smoke beer, you're just like, what the hell? And then if you're Brian, you just quit. Anybody else, you might go back for a second one. But it takes a little bit to get into. So I would agree, like my initial impression was a pretty heavy bitterness, but then I got, you know, it started to fade away, and then I brought it back down actually to a 3.
Yeah. I forget that this isn't like a normal I don't know, experience for some people, but at the tables when you're judging IPAs, sometimes you are judging an IPA category that has huge IBU range from 25 to 75, and going from one extreme to the other, you are always doing that comparison to the previous fight. And so sort of just not doing a comparison, kind of like what I was talking with Kathleen, not doing a comparison, but just acknowledging on your palate what you were tasting, and then your expectations for the next tasting, like keeping those in mind. And I see that some of you did that by like adjusting a little bit, because I have to admit, my first instinct was just like, that's a 5 in bitterness, but like keeping that in mind that we just tasted a Pilsner, that you know, Galaxy Trippin', yeah, maybe it's going to be a little high. I rested at a 4 is where I ended up. But what really jumped out to me is the dryness on this beer. Is not dry at all. This is like the perfect example of a beer that like leaves you salivating, that like leaves more moisture in your mouth that you have to swallow again after you've already swallowed the beer. Like, it just sort of, I don't know about you, but like I'm building up saliva right now just talking to you after drinking that beer. So I love that texture because it's so unique and you don't get it very often. There's dry, there's kind of dry, but this like actual like salivating kind of experience is not a common. Is anyone else like experiencing that right now?
That's interesting, Dana, that's how you categorize dry. I never thought of it like that. To me, it's dry, but not because I am salivating, but to me, that's a bitter reaction. A reaction to the bitter and it still tastes dry because it's not sweet. That's sort of my gauging, is like, to me, I gave it a 1 in sweetness because there's definitely some fruit there. But I still gave it a pretty high score in dryness as well. Not as high as the Pilsner, but because I don't know. I just never thought of it. That's interesting. I never thought of it. If it makes you salivate, is it dry?
It's interesting. I actually gave it a higher sweetness rating than the Pilsner, even though I also gave it a really high bitter rating.
Yeah.
So did I.
It's kind of hard to balance all of these like mouthfeel related things, right? And still like try to not compare it too much to the previous beer. But like, I find this beer to be both sweet and dry in a way, and I agree with Kelly that the bitterness has a lot to do with the dryness, and the sweetness has a lot to do with the body.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it funny that I put both sweet and dry on it also.
Sweet and dry, my favorite sugar substitute.
Well, and like for me, like I get the sweetness. Like I can get some of the malt sweetness to this, and so it's not necessarily like a residual sweetness to me, but it's like the malt flavor of sweetness is what I was picking up initially when I was thinking about it. Like it's not what I like about this as an IPA is that it's not 100% just in your face and only in your face hops. Like there is a balance to it that I find refreshing. That some IPAs just decide, you know what, when they're saying 2 pounds per barrel of hops, we're going to call it 3 pounds per barrel of hops, and then dry hop with another 18. I don't know, but what is interesting talking about IBUs, I don't know if anybody actually looked at the back of the bottle.
That's like half the IBUs I thought it was.
So like
it's less.
There's a reason. Hold on.
But yeah, I think that's the interesting thing too. Right? Like that you think back to like the hop race, and everybody had to have their IBUs listed on the board, and then everyone was just going for the highest IBU. And Dan, I don't want to steal any thunder because you do all the chemistry on it, but it's like this is 45 analytic, but does it perceive as 45?
Well, and I think it's going to be a little higher on this beer, the perceived bitterness, because I put a pretty high earthiness because I'm getting a little papery kind of flavor going on here. Yep. And I don't know if Kaylee wanted to address.
Oh, this is at the end of its shelf life.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is the spring seasonal.
Yeah.
Based upon Kylie and I were looking at date codes, and she said that this would code out on July 23rd.
Yep.
So it has, by Ninkasi standards, just under 30 days to sit on a shelf and be sold. After 30 days, it doesn't matter what it tastes like. It should be pulled. It's done. Partly because there is a new summer seasonal coming out. Or out. It is out.
Yeah, TR is the only place you can look at this.
Yeah, and that was the other thing too, is when I put out the emails like, you could go buy it, and Kylie looked at me and she's like, no, you can't. Shut up.
Someone has strong feels.
Man.
Yeah, my dog is pissed off that you can't buy Galaxy at your own corner store anymore. But yeah, that's just is that it's now at the end of its shelf life, so. Part of what we were thinking about, like we knew that they were trying to get rid of it at a pretty big discount. Sorry, I'm gonna go figure out what the fuck my dog's doing.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear how people described their breadiness, their kind of lower left quadrant there. What sort of elements were you picking up in the malt region of flavors?
I had 2 and 1 respectively on caramel and nutty. Not really so much bready. Like I rated the Pilsner at a 3 on bready.
Yeah. What kind of like go deeper in the bready is what I'm asking. Like,
go deeper in the bready? I don't know.
Is it a biscuit? Is it like pretzel? Is it?
I mean, I didn't really get any breadiness in this one for me. For me, it was sweeter than kind of bread.
Yeah.
So like I guess I don't associate the breadiness with a lot of sweetness. And so I went more for like the caramel and the nutty as opposed to breadiness on this one.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm with.
I said pumpernickel, but I think he's kidding.
Pumpernickel. Go, Aaron.
Oh, I was gonna say I was with Keaton and found that the kind of nutty caramel factor was there, although not at a super high, like excessive level.
Yeah, I was at like 2 on the nutty.
Do you want to be called on, Andrew?
And,
or are you waving?
Yeah.
Sorry, say again, Brant.
So I was like a 2 on the bready and 1 on the nutty. You know, I think that this beer has layers to it that kind of present itself differently. And the bitterness for me kind of override, it kind of stays with me, while all the other flavors are playing, but the bitterness kind of like stays in my mouth and plays with the, some of the malt character. And I like it. I like the layers on it. So I'm not sure how to describe that.
Layers, I think a good way to think of it is like palate, like front palate, mid palate, back palate, because you're right, like this beer kind of exists on all elements of that kind of forward to back, right? And it's a little bit different in each element, which you're right, like there's something new at each stage of drinking the beer.
I actually love the initial fruitiness. The like tropical fruit is pretty awesome, and then I find the bitterness a little overwhelming after that. Like I kind of wish it was less bitter so that I could enjoy the fruitiness a little more on it.
Yeah, but then it would be a pale ale.
Right, maybe.
Well, also like if the oxidation character wasn't there, that would probably linger a lot more. I mean, I think I can say from drinking this beer fresh that I know it does linger more, and there is that bigger like kind of passion fruity impact.
Yeah.
And I also have the pleasure of having a keg of this to compare it to, and my keg is not nearly as good as out of the bottle, even though the bottle's close to expiration. So interesting.
I noticed the fruitiness versus bitterness has a big effect is time between sips. Right. When you give time for those bitter compounds to unbind from your tongue, it kind of doesn't start to overwhelm it as much.
That's an interesting one. I never thought about that way. Science. Who knew?
Like spiciness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that was mentioned that we had some garlic with dinner. And that was one of the things that we were talking about.
I can see you now.
So we have a garlic plate where you like run the garlic over it and it mashes it, and you pour some balsamic on there and some oil, dip your bread in there, and it's amazing. But we were trying to figure out, like, our garlic is not amazing garlic, but holy hell does it become spicy with that, and like it just lingers. And there's definitely a chemical reaction there, but we were noticing an interplay with also the carbonation. Like we were drinking carbonated water at the same time. So like how like bitterness and spiciness and all that goes into play, acidity levels.
Yeah, man. And we're not even getting to the olfactory, like by that, right?
No.
Like we're just talking about the mouthfeel and the textures, right? You haven't even gotten to the flavors.
Nope.
So that's amazing.
Yeah. Do we want to move to Otis?
Let's drink some stout.
Okay.
Otis.
If people want to read about Galaxy, the link is in the chat.
We forgot to show charts, but that's okay. It seemed like we had a lot of disagreement.
Mine is a five-sided pinwheel.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I can see that.
I think too, like if we're digital, like when we share digital, we've got all of
Grant,
them.
that's what mine looks like.
I didn't see it. Brian, can you show it again?
All right.
Butterfly.
Nice
No, that is very different from mine.
Oh, Mark's on it. Oh, Mark, yours and Brant's looks pretty darn close.
Yours
And
is like
that's
New
similar.
Jersey plus
Yeah, that's similar.
Oklahoma.
Mine looks like a butterfly that got hit by a truck. So.
Our lower quadrants, we line up, but we disagree on hops. That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, I just thought that the bitterness was kind of dominant in this beer, but that's not a bad thing. It kind of stays with it in the top of my mouth, or the roof of my mouth, and then the back of my tongue, while the other stuff was going on in the other parts of things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I just like the complexity of this a little bit.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's really kind of a shame that it's just a seasonal. I really liked it as their spring IPA. Okay, 3-ish minutes. I'll check in. Otis, we're moving on to a stout. If you're using the same glass, might I suggest pouring a little bit of Otis in there, swirling, either shooting that, tossing it, but you definitely want to rinse some of the IPA out of your glass if you're using the same one.
Yeah. Good advice.
Check in with everyone in about 3 minutes.
So you know how there's a initial taste you get, and then there's the sort of retro nasal taste you get. For those of us with facial hair, there's also the you know, suck it out of your mustache taste you get afterward that you know, is completely different. Just throwing that out there.
It's really great 30 minutes later, and you're like, what the hell am I smelling? And it's just this old oxidized beer.
And it also includes dinner.
Yeah, and garlic.
Shot right past 3 minutes. Sorry about that. 3 minutes and 25 seconds. Good God. What am I doing? Losing track of the meeting.
Oh no.
Going off the rails.
What, a beer tasting had a tangent?
You're right, Michael. We are completely untrustworthy after we've been drinking for a while. You're totally irresponsible.
I offer my resignation as president for going 25 seconds over.
No, no,
too easy,
refuse.
Mike. That's too easy.
Oh my God, we're so fucked.
No kidding.
Oh, how are people feeling? Do they need a little bit more time on Otis?
It's a roller coaster of a one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I will say that this is the first Eugene beer I ever had 10 years ago when I came to visit my best friend, and I haven't had it since then.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Not for bad reasons.
Yeah, I actually haven't had it since I worked at Ninkasi.
Well, when you drink a
I'm
keg
just
of
like
it-
flooded with memories, right?
Yeah, drink a keg of it in a weekend and you'll get such heartburn that you'll be like, I'm not going near that beer in a long time. For a while. At least it used to be that way. I don't know.
I was so happy when they kicked the vanilla one.
I was gonna say I haven't seen. This is the first time I've seen the regular Otis back. How long has it been back? I haven't been looking for
like
it.
a year.
A while.
What? A year's a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it
I
was.
honestly like all the I really like the variations.
But it was just vanilla for a long time, and I wanted the just regular Otis.
Yeah.
So
So did everybody else.
Yeah, I made it the moment that Kylie told me the first keg of regular Otis was on at the TR. I made the pilgrimage right from work. I was just like, I'm there. I was
there too, man.
Yeah, it's just like you can't stop me from getting this beer
In
because
fact, it was on Nitro, so.
And it was on Nitro.
too. So it's like,
Oh.
I embarrassingly found out from my father, who was very excited that it was back.
What's funny is I had remembered this as a little more sessionable alcohol wise than it actually is. And I've tried to bring that back, that sense of Otis back, that it's a session beer, but it's not a session beer.
I mean,
Was vanilla a session? Is that what you mean?
No, I
No,
think
just my recollection of the beer.
Steve's sweetness made it feel like.
I mean, Galaxy and Otis are the same ABV.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And actually, this is a lower ABV than its initial.
I was younger then.
I want to say like original Otis was like 8 something, wasn't it?
Oh, no way.
Vanilla Otis was like 7.
No, not vanilla, but like the original, like first batch, like the first early batches of Otis.
Well, Otis was originally brewed for the Holiday Ale Fest, so yes, it was.
It was a big beer. It was like an 8% originally.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That was my first interaction.
But then when it went to year round, I think we switched. It was switched to like 7.6, and now it's down to 7. I think maybe at some point it took a dive at like 7.3 or 7.2. But
that's very interesting because that's probably the last time I had this, and it's explaining a lot of the differences I'm tasting from what I expected it to taste like. I guess.
Well, so
I haven't had it since then.
Yeah.
Since 10
So
years ago.
how'd your tasting end up?
Are we done? I don't want to.
Oh, I think we
sway anyone.
I think Kelly, you definitely like lead us.
Sway us with your vocab.
So it was a lot thinner than I expected. Maybe it's very carbonated to me for this style, but that could just be me. Again, I know I shouldn't compare it to what I remember, and it's probably 10 years ago. Who remembers accurately from 10 years ago? But yeah, it was surprisingly high carb for the style for me and lower body than I expected, which could be, working off of each other. I got roasts in my face, big roast, and that's kind of all I can taste. I mean, I get some fruitiness and some herbally, kind of a little bit of spice, but I'm having a hard time separating the spice from the bitterness, that kind of spice. And sweet, but not like that's why I reread the back that says, chocolate. I'm like, I get bitterness from the chocolate, but I'm not getting a whole lot of sweet from chocolate, which is okay, right? It's not milk chocolate. It's not a milk stout. But I'm also not getting as much diacetyl as I thought I would because it's an oat stout. Again, maybe it's the high carbonation that I'm getting from it, but that's my.
All those like high points that you hit are high points on my wheel as well. The sweetness, a little bit more bitter than I expected, a little less body than I expected. I got a little nuttiness, roastiness, like you said.
Is there coffee in this? Or maybe it's just, no, because it's roast. I just get roast.
I would almost like a little bit of sweetness.
My only 5 for tonight was on roast for this.
Yeah, it's big.
And
It's
I would
hard to
almost like a
take.
little sweetness just to balance it out a little bit.
And then that herbalness, right? But I,
Yeah.
I'm sitting here trying to like identify like what is that herbal element?
Because it's not cloves, but it's something that sharpness that cloves have. That
It's an oxidative character coming through, so
could be cloves then.
I don't know. I drink
could be
Otis
the
a
hop.
lot sensory, and this is not quite on the mark. I can't tell because our bottle date codes are really bad, but I think this might actually be passcode if anybody can read their date code.
Yeah, so date codes are along the bottom rim.
It helps if they're wet.
The best we were able to get was a 6 for the month.
We think.
Oh, this looks like 420.
Yeah,
Which
mine
is
looks like a 4
funny.
something.
Yeah,
Well,
which would
it's-
put it
it's
way out of code.
Yeah, 420.
Mine's 10:02:20.
10:02:20.
Shouldn't
Yeah.
have 3 numbers. It says
Five.
N21, then 04, then 20.
Isn't it? Isn't it month, day, year?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 222 month, day, year.
Yeah, I got 10 or 90. I'm guessing the latter's probably wrong. And then 02 and then 20 for sure. Mine's pretty legible.
That's crazy. So is mine. And mine says N21, literally the letter N, 21, 04, 20, which would make me think it's day, month, year, which is how the
Mine too,
rest
but
of
it could be an 0120 on
Maybe
mine.
they switched.
it's an
And
N.
below
I mean,
the
if I
date,
could
I
show
have
you-
14:02, so I think exactly at 2:02 p.m. it's going bad.
Yep.
So what you're saying, Kylie, more importantly, is that normally it's better than this.
Yeah, normally there's way more.
That's what I need to hear. It's not bad. It's just I was expecting more, I guess.
Yeah, this is not what I would consider to be bland.
Hey, on a technical note, how do I get only the Otis to show up on my little doodle?
Select the 2 columns, right click, and then hide columns.
Thank you.
Did that help?
Hooray!
Cool.
I made
It
him.
definitely has a broader histogram or whatever. What do you call those graphs?
Spider chart.
Spider chart.
A what chart?
Spider chart.
Spider. It has a broader
Or
spider
a
chart.
rose chart
A rose
if you want to
chart.
be prettier.
Rose chart. Oh, better than spiders.
If you're scared of spiders.
This one looks like a
Spiders are awesome.
bluebell for me.
Depends on how fancy
Is that
you're
pretty
feeling.
similar to yours, Kelly?
But show it again. I didn't see it because I was looking at mine selfishly. I was highlighting or unhighlighting. No, actually, mine's a little bit lower. Mine looks more like a bluebell. I can show you.
Oh, that looks almost exactly like mine. That's scary.
Ours does?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we should never judge together.
Nope.
Can you see that? See, mine's more like a bluebell.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That
Wow,
looks
so
like a
caramel's
Cloverfield
really
volunteer.
low for you? Because I get like such a like tangy, like
Again, I don't know if it's the carbonation and the bitterness that's overpowering, so I can't taste the sweet and the caramel, but it's like it almost tastes as dry as the Pilsner to me. As crazy as it's. I mean, okay. No, I don't know.
I thought it was pretty dry too. I have a 3 for dry actually. Mine looks.
Let's see yours, Keaton.
Hold on.
Oh.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh.
It's Antarctica for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a continent.
Yeah.
A continent, not incontinent.
Yeah.
Mutually exclusive.
So one of the cool things, and it's something that I'm working on to like create something that can do this, is to actually import all this data and create an average based off of it. Because I've found that when I've done guided tastings on these, that the aggregate ends up being the most accurate, you know, where you can be like, oh, I totally see my bias now that I can see the average of everyone's. It like really paints a really cool picture of the beer. And it takes into all of our palates, which is way more accurate than just one person.
Yeah, and
That's with everything.
Yeah, and that's the one thing too, is like it's a cool tool. Like if you have the PDF or the Excel, the Google Sheets link, you can do this for any beer you're
Yeah.
drinking, right? But the thing to remember is that you're charting your own personal kind of taste, and that's one thing that you would want to think about too if you're going into judging or something where your personal bias needs to be acknowledged, so that you're not. I can't say how many times I've sat across a table from somebody where they're just like, no, this is exactly what this is, and I'll be damned if you're going to tell me different. And that it's really hard to sit with those people and judge beer, to not to not be able to hear what they're saying. What am I tasting, and then like balance that and try and come to essentially compromise. But it is like there are some people who are just like, no, like my palate is the end all be all on IPAs, and by damn, if you don't taste the same thing I am, then you're worthless as a judge. Like that's not the goal. And what this tool, what Dana's created, I think is really useful, is like recognizing what you're tasting, especially if you were to do this in another social setting. Like you're hanging out with some other, I know that this sounds kind of weird to do, but you're hanging out with maybe some other people from CBS, and you're just like, hey, let's, we're all drinking my homebrew. Here, fill out the spider chart. What are you tasting? What are you seeing? Because I don't know if we always, for like our own personal homebrewing, but even like commercial tastings, if we go through and are as analytical about it as we could be. And that's why I like tools like this. Like it's a fun time to start building your vocabulary.
Yeah.
As I was doing this, I'm thinking about BJCP judging, and there's no aroma and there's no appearance. I'm just so used to that, so it made me just really think about the beer in a completely different way.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, Kathleen, because so aroma and appearance, I find when I'm like sitting down to judge a beer, that's like those are the two things I can fill out the quickest, right? I can fill out aroma and appearance like nobody's business. I don't even get hand cramps. Like that's easy. It's when I get to the mouthfeel and the flavors that I like start thinking about this. And this is where my biggest like memory and like processing is happening, is in this mouthfeel, in this flavor. How can I break it down? And so I literally, if you read my judging sheets and look at this wheel, you will see my logic. I'm sure Mark or any of the Gwynns could pull up one of my judging sheets and literally read it out loud and be like, oh, wow, there, look, she said mouthfeels, then she said taste, then she said malt. Like it's how I process that harder element of BJCP.
Well, and to tackle on from Dana and Kathleen, thank you for bringing up BJCP, because that's the one thing that I've been holding back, is the idea. Like I know, having talked with club members, we're always saying, okay, let's couch this in the pre-COVID era, right? We need more judges. We need more judges for COC. We need more judges for KLCC. We want people to come judge. You need no experience. And that's very true. You don't. But some people feel like they are inadequate as judges. And I would say if you can fill out this chart, you can judge any competition you want. Because what I think about is, think about the numbers 0 through 5. Dana used water and then overpowering at 5, right? Put the BJCP descriptors on there. 5 being absolutely ridiculously high. So if you say something is a 4, can you find a way to say, hey, I thought the breadiness of this malt, maybe the flavor, was a 4. So you can say that's maybe a moderately high bready malt character to this beer. You thought the fruitiness, and now that's where we might have to differentiate between aroma and flavor, hop versus fermentation character. That takes a little bit more nuance. But if you think the hoppiness of that Galaxy was a 4 on fruitiness, you can say the fruity quality of the hop character was moderately intense and had notes of, and then describe whatever fruit you were tasting or smelling, I shit you not when I say this, if you were to do that, you are better than half the people that we have ever had judge any competition.
Sad but true.
It literally, if you think about judging in terms of the scale of 0 to 5 in intensity, and maybe mentally fill out this wheel as you're tasting a beer, you can judge any competition you want, and you will be as good, if not better, judge than the person that you're partnered with, because you're actually thinking about all of those qualities and how they pertain to the beer that's in front of you. And that would be the challenge that I would leave everyone with if you haven't judged a competition before, or you've never felt like you can judge a competition before, is to think about this wheel, think about this tool, and say, how can I use that to better my own vocabulary on describing what I'm tasting and smelling, feeling in my mouth, in terms of the beer that's set in front of me, and then just say, what's the sentence that I pair with this number? And that's literally all that judging is saying, here's a 4 in my vocabulary. A 4 means that. And that, to me, I say this, I really hope at some point we can have a fucking competition.
I think if we do it like this, we can, right?
No, we definitely can. But I mean, I like and I enjoy in person, like in that room, you've got a bunch of people and they're all judging beer. Like there's something about that I really, really love.
The atmosphere.
The atmosphere is just so great. And so like if we're able to ever get back to that, I hope anybody who's sitting in on this call, who's watching this on YouTube, feels empowered at least to say, you know what, I can volunteer to sit down at a table for 3 hours, judge a flight of beer. Maybe that's all I can do. And that I would, as somebody who's organized a comp and tried to wrangle people, that's all I need. But like, you can do it. Like, I promise you can.
And you get free beer, like tonight.
Yeah, you get free beer.
And just to say out loud what Kelly put in chat, like if you are too scared to jump right into judging, you can always steward. Stewarding's really fun. You can learn and eavesdrop.
Yep. And the same thing too is like the stewards that I have seen that have had the best experience at competitions are the ones that are not just hanging back and waiting to take the next beer out. They're literally like hanging over the judges, going, what are you saying? What are you tasting? What are you smelling? And just like listening in. And then when that flight's done, they're like, oh, I'm taking that beer. They really like this. I'm going to drink some of that, see if I can come up with those same notes.
The really sad part is, Michael, I've been to competition stewarding where that is extremely discouraged.
Yeah.
They don't seen and not heard.
Just depends, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it does come down to, I think, the individual competition coordinators. I would say, like for the KLCC one that CBS puts on, stewards would never. I mean, other than the fact that the space that we have up in Ninkasi is like a little cramped sometimes for the number of people we have. Stewards I have always passed beers to stewards to say, this is an amazing beer for this style. If you're interested in the style, you should drink it. But that's my own personal.
Yeah, I think that's the perk of being a steward, because you get to hear the comments of the judge rather than just delivering the beer, going back, to wherever. But standing by the table and listening to the comments at the discussion and having a chance maybe to sample the beer afterwards, you learn a lot and you get more confident in being able to evaluate beers, and pretty soon you'll be sitting at the table.
That was definitely my experience stewarding at KLCC last year. Like, I sat there and drank the beer while they were talking about it. And that was, obviously I stepped back and let them discuss it, but like, it was, it's a really cool experience.
Stewards can also be called upon to help settle disputes. There's like some tasting responsibility that can come along with that, especially if you judge like at bigger competitions than
I was asked at the sour table what I tasted in one of them, and I was like, it tastes like THP to me. And they were like, yes. Once I don't remember who it was, but someone was like, yes, that's what I said too. So yeah, for sure.
That's what I was gonna say, Adam, is your point is well taken, that like it's a really good way to get yourself validated, which I feel like is a lot of problem. You know, when you're scared to judge, you're like, I taste this, but does anybody else taste this? Am I weird for tasting this? And when you steward, you don't have, I mean, even when you don't get that, you know, hey, can you come taste this, steward? Tigre, tigre. You know, you can sit back and taste it, and then you hear or you see afterwards the judging and what they tasted, and you're like, hey, that's what I tasted. And so it's kind of like Brant says, a step toward feeling comfortable enough to be at the table. Although I prefer stewarding to judging now.
Well, there's also like, you know, we lean on each other as judges too, so you can learn a lot that way. Like, I'm Mark's diacetyl tester, so I'll get Mark, hey! And so like if that's something you're trying to learn as someone, you get exposed to that as well, that we don't often get a lot of at club members showing up with beers with those flaws in them. So not only do you get to learn the good sides, but also the bad sides, which can help you improve your own brewing and recipes as well.
Well, and the one thing that I would say is yes, enter as a steward, but also be willing to step past that, because too often I find that people are so willing to be like, oh, well, I can steward and that's all I'm going to do. And like, I'll participate. And we have had people who have been stewards, and I'm just like, you can judge. Like, I trust your palate. Sit your ass down and judge these 6 beers with me. And people go, oh,
Are
no.
you being passive aggressive right now?
No, I'm not being passive aggressive with anybody, but it is just like, that is from my side of things. Like, it's so easy, just speaking like me personally, it's really easy for me to find my comfort zone and be like, oh, I'm just going to like coast. I'm just going to be right here. And that's great. And I don't want to stop people from doing that. But at the same time, like, realize if you're wanting to get better at that, you will have to step out. Like, you will have to step out of that steward position and say, you know what, I can sit down and judge this flight. I'm happy to do that. But obviously you have to be comfortable doing that as well. So like, how do you build that comfort? But then once you get to that point, what's the next step? And that's the one thing that I want, like, this kind of meeting to tell people is, yeah, build your comfort as a steward, but also realize that every single person here has a valid palate, and that everything that's going on this piece of paper, if you're doing on paper or on Google Sheets, you can translate that directly to, and I will actually, I'm going to do it. I'm going to drop this damn stupid thing that I've been working on in the chat. There is a digital fillable BJCP score sheet.
Sweet.
So you don't want to print, you don't have a printer. I don't have a printer that fucking works. Here's one that you can just type in. Granted, you get about 4 to 5 lines per field. I couldn't get it to do more. Really sorry about that.
Oh my God, dude, that is awesome.
I've been fucking around with that for too long.
But can you change the font size so that you can write really tiny and even more?
I think
You're
I set
fine.
the default font size to 8 if you're using Adobe.
That's pretty
Acrobat.
tiny. That's pretty good.
Dude, nicely done.
I don't use Adobe Acrobat as my default PDF reader. So.
Foxit?
No, Preview. It's Mac.
So can I?
Fuck.
Yeah, come on in.
So I know, like, I'm somewhat new to beer tasting, but I've been doing tea tasting for a long time. And of course, every time I comment about something, I'm going to say, this is what we say with tea, because that's just my reference point. But I work with food scientists and sensory scientists in the tea world who talk a lot about how different we all taste things depending simply on our genetics.
Yeah.
There are a lot of factors that go into what taste we perceive, just simply depending on what genes we have, or what different also associations we have with things. And so I know one of my close friends, when he and I taste tea together, our responses are always completely different from each other. And when I first started doing this, it was like, oh my God, I don't know anything. I can't do this, whatever. And now I'm just like, you know what? That is just like the part of the thing, part of the experience is that it isn't that anybody is right or wrong. You can train your palate to pick up certain things, to associate certain types of flavors with certain terms and certain words. But really at the end of the day, people taste what they taste. And that really kind of is valid all on its own. And I think over time, if you just taste enough of any one particular thing, you learn a lot about how flavors blend together and layer together and how they play off of each other, because there's so much encapsulated in with that. If you have a sweetness balanced with bitterness versus if you have a balance or a bitterness that doesn't have anything to balance it out on the other end, there's so much. It's so complicated. It's so much more than just simply, this is bitter, that's not bitter, this is sweet, this is not sweet. And again, depending on your experiences, your preferences, your genetics, everybody's going to have a different perception of it. So I've been watching this with you guys and thinking, oh geez, I was a little scared to, show my results on any of these. But as I saw how much different everyone's it was, I was like, oh, well, it's the same thing with tea then. It's all just different, and everybody's opinion is valid.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I always get frustrated when I hear people say you're wrong. And hopefully throughout this whole tasting, you didn't hear that once from me, because the only thing that's different, like nothing is wrong. It's just, how are we describing it? How are we associating our experiences and then putting that into a vocab? I love that you say you have a friend who's like your like antithesis for your tasting of teas, because that's Aaron and me. Like when we get at a table, we're just like, oh, I rated that a 47. And Aaron's like, that's a 17, Dana. Like, and then we have to find that middle ground. And I actually find that Aaron challenges me as a judge more so than say Michael, who I tend to always agree with. Like, there are people who have really similar palates to you, and it's you want to gravitate towards them. But I find that a challenge for me is when someone tastes very much differently than me, and that is what like pushes me and pushes my vocabulary, and it pushes me to find words like pencil shavings and like wet concrete, like it's like
when I first opened the Galaxy Trippin', I smelled it and I said, cat urine.
Yeah, that's a hop off flavor that Kylie hates about IPAs. So. That's you nailed it, girl. We all ignored it out of courtesy to Ninkasi.
So Angela, can I say my favorite time judging with anybody is people who are sensory trained in other fields, where it's chocolate, coffee, tea, like having people who are trained in sensory just in their world, that translates almost one-to-one. If the vocabulary is different, but it's just like it's so great to just hear the same thing. Because I think I was judging NHC and I was judging against next to someone else, and they had a background in, God, I don't know what it was. I don't even remember what it was, but it was another foodstuffs. And they're just like, oh, all these flavors are coming out. And I asked for a pour of one of their beers. And I was just like, oh shit, you nailed all of this. And I have no idea what your background was. Two, also, if nobody's paying attention to the chat, I'm going to bug Angela about this tea tasting thing that she just mentioned. And we'll get that out to the club, because I think people would be interested in a black tea tasting, a class on the differences between black teas from different countries around the world, like a fundraiser for the Shelton McMurphy Johnson House. I think as a club, that's something that we would be probably interested in, because it's sensory. It's another beverage. There's
someone mentioned coffee recently too as being like another beverage that'd be interesting to taste, because it's similar similar components, right? And similar process.
And that's where we have multiple connections. And we'll exercise those as we can and see what we can do for some sort of digital cupping.
Totally. Well, and I would always be happy to do like, you know, tea tastings with you guys. I mean, I know it's not at all beer, but you know, it's the same thing of just building perceptions of flavors. And, you know, I blend my own teas. And so over the years, you know, I've been doing it for like 9 years now. And so I teach classes about blending teas and about how you can put flavors together and build upon them, and how, you know, it's so complicated. You know, the last time I taught a class, I finally was just like, you know what, it's like building a damn house. You have to have a foundation, you have to have support beams, you have to have walls, you have to make it look pretty, you have to, like, you know, all these things, because it's just so damn complicated. And so, you know, anytime, I
know that if Matt were here, he's our education head. If he were here, he would say he'd want to do a meeting where you do a tea tasting with us. I think a lot of us will probably participate in this tasting, but if there's a way that you wouldn't mind like customizing it or some sort of little tasting for our club that maybe also discussed kombucha potential or elements, that way we can tie in the fermentation, that would be awesome.
Well, some teas are also fermented, right? Teas, like tea leaves are fermented too, right?
Well, some of them. So like black teas are oxidized, different than fermented. It's not a microbial process, but there is an entire category of tea called pu'er. It's a Chinese type of tea, and also in other countries it can be produced, but it's called heicha. And it is actually fermented. It's aged for, I mean, anywhere from a few months to 100 years. You know, it's kind of like wines in terms of vintages, and it's all a microbial fermentation.
Cool.
And similarly with beer, it's not as popular here in the US, but you know, blending and combining flavors in the way that you spoke of is equally important for, you know, particularly in Belgian beers, where you need, you know, character, you need depth, you need a little bit of brightness, you need a little bit of, you know, heaviness, you need a little sweetness, you need to bring all these flavors together. We don't do that as much, but it's just as important in beer too.
Well, and like I say, when I'm blending herbal teas or something like that, you know, I mean, I do a lot with black and green and oolong and whatnot, but when I blend herbal teas, you know, there's so much that goes along with, you know, which types of things go well together, and all of that translates to beer. A friend of mine who brews beer, I, you know, will toss some herbs once in a while when I have a batch that just, you know, came in, it wasn't what I wanted it to be or whatever. I'm like, here, you know, have several pounds of rose petals, I don't want them, you know. And he's like, oh, can I put them in my beer? I said, sure, I don't know, do it, you know. And he's come up with some interesting concoctions. So speaking of which, if anybody ever needs like a few pounds of jasmine flowers or like rose petals or cardamom fluff or, you know, any of these things, let me know, because I literally have like 600 pounds of spices in the other room.
Yeah,
like, I'm not joking.
I know. You emailed me about cardamom, but I know Kylie and Kelly are probably going to contact you at some point.
That's fine. I mean, I'm happy to tack on, even if it's something that I don't typically have. I you know, get stuff from suppliers all over the country, and so I can get almost any herb at wholesale prices, and I'm happy to pass that along to people.
Well, and so the other thing too that I wanted to touch on, Angela, that you had mentioned was you mentioned cat pee with the Galaxy. There's an interesting so there's a bunch of hop research out there that there's genetics in how you perceive certain. And Aaron, I think you get Stan's emails as well, right? Stan Hieronymus, the Hop Chronicles and whatnot.
Hop queries, yeah.
Queries, but there are certain terpenes, linelules that, based upon your genetics, you may skew. And this is the really weird thing, because Kylie and I are definitely different on this. Cat pee over here really fucking limey over here. Like it is.
When you say limey, do you mean limes or like British people?
I actually mean the fruit, not the people.
Citrus. Extreme
I just want to be.
But
I
no,
just want to be
it's
specific.
not even like, it's not even generic citrus. Like I get a lime character on beers that Kylie goes, this just smells like cat pee. And I'm just like, this is like, I just juiced and zested a lime. Like this is amazing. So there's an interesting one there too that people can like unpack in their own tasting. What are you perceiving?
So
if you're getting cat pee, maybe that's more lime character for somebody else.
Graduate.
Hey, congratulations, Keaton.
Congratulations.
You know,
David's first day of work.
Sorry.
Woo!
I was just gonna say, asparagus pea is the same way. They did a bunch of studies because originally they thought that certain people, you know, after they eat asparagus, their pee smelled bad. But it turns out that they were studying the wrong thing, and eventually they realized that everybody's pee smells bad, but only certain people can actually smell asparagus pea. So I happen to be one of those that it's very strong for, but other people
Not
can't.
everybody produces it either.
Is that like the cilantro thing where either you hate it because it tastes like soap or you love it because it doesn't
Yeah,
taste like
well, so there's a enzyme that converts the whatever's in asparagus to that smell, and not everybody has it. So not everybody makes asparagus.
Oh no, I heard it wasn't true. I read something just recently that I was like, really? That everybody makes it, but not everybody can smell it.
That was my understanding too.
Yeah.
That's what you
Is that
smell?
not everyone
Oh,
can
that's
smell.
what you read.
It's a new thing that they thought everybody thought exactly what Keaton just said, but that this new thing.
Mm.
But why does it
Well,
matter?
I'm not up on the new research on asparagus pea.
Why does it matter, right?
Work on that, Keaton.
Yeah, well,
As long as we're talking about urine smells, I just thought I'd bring that up.
Before we degrade too far, I
was
do
gonna say
wanna-
I sense an ed talk coming up.
I can get deeper. Just saying. Okay.
Before
Go
you
ahead.
When I was nursing my children and had to take fenugreek to help with milk production, and everyone said, "Oh, it'll make your pee and your body odor smell like maple syrup," and all I could smell was curry.
Yeah, it's a weird curry and maple syrup smell. I've
Yeah.
They use fenugreek for fake maple syrup.
Now I
Yeah.
had just previously been living in India for 3 years, so there was a lot of reasons that I associated things with curry, but still, all I could smell was curry. I would do curry.
Not so bad.
Yeah, it
Could be worse.
wasn't too bad. It was better
So
smelling.
not on that note at all.
Fine, change the subject.
One of the things that I have found really useful regarding the flavor wheel is actually thinking about a beer you really love and like mapping what your expectation of that beer would look like, and then drinking it and remapping it as you're drinking it. And it sort of shows you your biases and sort of what your expectations look like. And I actually did that for these 3 beers beforehand. Otis with like my previous knowledge, Pilsner with my previous knowledge, and Galaxy Trippin with actually only one taste before. So they were not, Otis was closest, I would say, between them. But, I think it goes to show that your expectations sometimes can also mess up your tasting notes. But on that, I think I am headed out for the night. So thank you all for
Thanks, Dana.
for participating.
Dana.
It was so awesome. I hope you like the flavor wheel.
Thanks,
Feel free
Dana.
to edit it, change it, add more columns, add more beers. It'd be fascinating to create some sort of database, and I'm kind of working on that.
Or a bathroom wall.
Can we download it through Excel or anything besides just Google Sheets?
Yeah.
Michael sent off a PDF that you should be able to.
And then I think I can convert it to an Excel file too, and then share that as well.
Okay, I've got the PDF, but it you've got to hand fill it out. It's kind of nice with that
Yeah,
going
no,
out with it.
and that was just it. That was part of the reason why I put out in the instructions. I was because one of the things when Dana was building this for the Oakshire tasting last week, we found out very quickly that mobile users, if you were using an iPad to fill it out or like a phone, Google Sheets is somewhat clunky. So yeah, no, I can send out an Excel file and get that hosted on the CBS site. And make sure that Dana's okay with any edits that have to happen to translate it one way or the other. Yeah. Yeah, I think also because it is almost 9 o'clock. This has been an awesome meeting. Your mother potentially maybe doesn't live with you. I don't know, but you should clean up after yourself. That's your own table. Tip your server. Pat yourself on the back. And if nothing else, watch for the email concerning camp out. And it's good to see everybody.
Good to see you. Good
Yeah,
to
thank you all.
see everybody.
This was fun. It was really good.
Bye, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Dana.
Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
All right.
Everybody contributed really well.
Thanks for bringing it all back home.
I figured, shit, we came close to 9 o'clock. I was like, oh shit.
Are we gonna kill it or are we gonna hang?
We gotta do that. I'm willing to sit around for a little bit. Kylie is probably freezing her ass off.
I got a sweatshirt.
Our dog is pissed off that I got this bag of
Macbeth cookies.
That looks
dog
not
crap.
good in my screen.
Well, it's just spent grain cookies.
Okay, I'd eat that.
Yeah, no, Brian and Christy dropped it off, and Penny's just pissed because we're not paying attention to her, and we're not getting her peas off the pea plant. So, Angela,
Hi, Angela.
Hi.
We'll see you.
Thanks for the tea
Angela.
info.
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah,
can always
I-
ask me key questions, that's for sure.
I will send that out to the club too as a big blast, and we'll get that going.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks.
Hey,
Hey,
Oh.
cheers, everybody.
cheers.
Good to see you. This was good. It worked. It worked well.
I thought so.
What you drinking now?
Oh my God.
Lila.
Lager?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they canned both that and
Oh.
just for Brian, smoked beer.
I'm sorry, you lost me at smoked.
But this Lila is like drinking hay.
It
Like
is.
it's hay and country, like it's floral hay.
Is it carbonated?
Lila being on
No.
draft.
It's flat
Oh.
hay.
Flat. It's like chewing on a.
It's not like my batch of Adam that I drank last night. Batch 79. It was flat as fuck. Still really delicious, but did the research. That was brewed in November of 2009.
Of the wood? Of the stone?
No, straight Adam. Straight Adam.
That might have been like before all the wood stuff. That was like right.
No, he did wood. He did wood in 09.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, it was just one that,
That sounded wrong.
yeah.
Sounds right to me.
No, it was one of those.
I'll let Carl
walk
know.
out and I was
Thanks,
like,
Aaron.
just grab some fucking beer out of the fridge.
Carl, you missed a kiss from Aaron. Carl said, "Oh."
The only way he can get a kiss from me now. Oh.
It's literally like
Need more, I apparently need more beer.
We're gonna go bye.
Good to see you, Kathleen. Carl, you're not there, but
Yeah, he's somewhere.
we're glad you're
When are
alive.
you gonna join us on Fridays again?
Well, I found I was working full time starting at the beginning of May, and I just last week started going to Fridays off, so might be able to pull it off.
We'll be there on Friday.
Okay.
This Friday?
I'll be there on, well,
We may be coming to you
It's
later.
a holiday.
Anybody can fucking start the thing that they want. So the link goes live the moment somebody clicks on it.
Okay. So whoever shows up. Okay. Yep. Let's do it, you guys. Let's do it.
I plan on it.
Okay.
Depends
Pinot Barrel quad.
Yeah.
Single barrel quad?
Pinot Barrel.
Oh, Pinot from where?
Pinot quad.
King Estate.
Mike and
You nailed it. Oh,
You
you
got us.
nailed us.
That's Mark.
I squeeze your head.
You know, that was the Belgian quad that we got a barrel from King Estate through Ale Song, never been used, freshly emptied last August, September, somewhere around
Somewhere in there.
there. And then had 6 people put in Belgian quads of varying strength from like your sessionable quad at only like 8% up to your sipping quad at like 12%.
It's dark.
Yeah.
I mean, it's solid brown for sure.
Mhm.
What you can't see is like the I don't know what to call like this deep orange, like this Jurassic amber highlight on the edge.
Oh God, the highlights on that beer are just gorgeous.
It's really pretty.
I mean,
and what I was reading in my beer journal, I was like kind of nostalgically going back through, and I read the recipe for what I did for my portion of this barrel. There were some herbs in there.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Surprise.
There's some like yarrow and sage and some stuff in there that I don't remember putting in.
Harvested naked, probably.
Hopefully.
Garlic abuse, by the way.
Liz put me up to all of that, for the record. She photographed it and she was like, "Oh, you should get naked and stand by those flowers." I was like, "Yeah, okay.
Absolutely, you should."
It doesn't take a lot of arm twisting to get me naked.
Well, you said Mr. June, and I read Mount June. I'm like, really? You're on Mount June?
I was there on Father's Day.
That's why I got confused, I think.
Yeah. Mr. Mount June.
Mr. Mount June, exactly. Plus, the solstice is traditionally Hike Naked Day, so.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, yeah, I mean, at my college, May 1st was the May Day naked bike ride. And so we would all just go down. Some people would paint their bodies, ride through campus, go to the dock, and everybody jump in the river. It was so great. In May, when the water's still really nice and chilly.
Sure, it's just the cold water.
Yeah, it was shrinkage. Yep. Doing the old, the classic photography manipulation. Hide the genitals.
Speaking of which, it's fairly chilly tonight for a late June.
It is. I think I'll get a sweatshirt.
Yeah, it's supposed to drop below 50 for the next few nights, which is insane. It's not good for my peppers, man.
No.
They'll catch up.
I'm not thinking so. Our whole garden is real sad.
But we still have like 4 months of growing season here. Like in Colorado, if you're not harvesting by, mid-August, then you got to worry about the freeze and stuff. But here, like, I was harvesting tomatoes last year until November.
Depends on the year.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
we need to spend more time amending our soil.
Yeah.
You guys wanna dig some well composted chicken manure out of my coop, you're welcome to, or I could bring some over. It's
pick up on that.
amazing.
Yeah.
So with chicken manure, usually you're supposed to let it rest for a year, right? Because it's got stuff in it.
I dig down a few inches.
Yeah.
And then,
I would
like,
always
scrape
pull
off
mine
the
out.
top. And then
Okay.
I haven't had a problem with it burning anything back. I mean, I don't know. Here, if you can see like all of that overgrowth there, there are multiples of 20 different species of plants growing in there. And that's like the first time I've really spread chicken shit around, and
it works.
Yeah, nothing's hungry.
Yeah. I mean, chickens are pretty good at spreading it around themselves too, if you just let them go.
Part of the reason I don't let them out is because they spread it around by digging everything up.
That's true. Yeah, I've heard your, I would always take when I cleaned out the coop and pile it up in a area somewhere and let it sit for a year to compost, basically.
Yeah.
Mostly to kill off any bacteria and stuff that is in there, but that's what I've heard you're supposed to do with chicken stuff, but it's probably fine.
It's fine. It's very dark brown. There's worms living in it.
I have a compost bin that's kind of overflowing that I could put some in my garden, but I've already put a lot in my garden. And so if anybody wants to come and get like bins of compost, it's basically food scraps, mostly vegetables. I occasionally will put like some fish skin or something in it, and eggshells, but it's mostly vegetables. And so if anybody needs some buckets of compost, you're welcome to have a few.
Sweet.
Yeah. I should just use them, but I've already kind of planted my garden and I've already dumped a whole bunch on there. So I don't have enough garden space for the amount of compost I generate.
Yeah, it can only go so far, right?
Yeah. And I just dumped a big batch of grain on it the other day. So
have you heard of bokashi?
Bokashi, no.
Bokashi is
I have.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Have you experienced it?
We did it on the stuff at the Coconut Bliss kitchen before we went to whoever came by and collected our stuff for composting.
What is it?
It's basically you take well, I know it mostly as beer kashi. So spent grains you inoculate with specific blend of bacteria and yeast. Let that ferment, and then you just spread it on the ground. You don't have to dig it in or anything like that, and it's really good for no-till. And it's just super healthy for plants. It provides a lot of nutrients right away.
Yeah, I don't know if it was in the blend of the stuff that we had from the guy, but we would all have our lunch together and then put everything in the compost and put a sprinkle on top of the layer, and then the next day put the food in and sprinkle. But anytime we were putting food in the bucket, we put more of the bokashi on top, and then he came and took it away. And he was
cool.
same thing, using it almost instantly.
What is the inoculant?
I think there's a lot of lactobacillus species involved, but then other bacteria and fungi. But it is a pretty quick breakdown. I would equate it to like a super fancy compost tea.
Right.
But more solid. There's matter in there that gets spread around.
And it probably continues to ferment when you spread it out and break down anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. The idea is, I think, to get it to that specific point where the plants can utilize it right away once it goes, into their root zone.
So do you find somebody who has a starter or something that you inoculate with, or can you just put it in your compost pile, or?
We had a dry powder that we sprinkled on. So
a dry powder?
Yeah. Okay. Available product that you can sprinkle on.
Yeah, and that there's that. I'm sure that there's I mean, I saw a freaking gallon of compost tea for $70 at Eugene Backyard Farmer the other day. I was like,